recorded. I spoke so much, it went off. Okay. So anyway, I am having a very good friend of mine who is really an apt person for this session to talk on the history, evolution, and relevance of design thinking in today's times. And one small challenge which I have given him already, post-pandemic, how you see the things move ahead with design thinking, and then implementation of design thinking through management of innovation, because we are good ideators, mediocre implementers. I asked that same question to Anbu sir in the Q&A session. So Ramki sir, the virtual meeting room is now for yours. The virtual floor is yours. Over to Ramkrishnan sir.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Sudipto. Just to recheck, my screen is seen and I'm audible, right?
Yes.
Thank you. So there are two things very difficult in life.
Yes. Somebody is asking something.
No, sir, we are seeing your screen. No problem. You can
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There are basically two things very difficult in life. Running a session just after lunch and running a session after my boss has spoken. So these are two things, and this has come together this time. So I hope I live up to the expectations of whatever Dr. Sudipto has said. So basically, just to recap whatever Dr. Anbu said prior to lunch, I'll just, for me, there were three very, very important things, questioning the assumptions. When you question the assumptions, what happens is you are increasing your curiosity level. When you are increasing your curiosity level, you will not rest content until the correct problem has been identified. And once the problem has been identified, you get the correct solution out of it. So here what happens is, you are not falling in love with a solution. You are falling in love with the problem. That is why what we, Anbu also said, design the thinking first and then thinking the design. Normally what happens is, in our enthusiasm, in our curiosity, we say, okay, this is what a farmer wants. I know what a farmer's problem is. I know how to solve the solution. I'll create an app. Excellent. Does the farmer have a mobile? Does the farmer have the knowledge to operate a mobile? Does the farmer know how to download a mobile? Download an app? Does the farmer know how to use an app? These are the things that come much, much later. They are part of thinking the design. But the fundamental question is, what is the problem for a farmer? This is just an example that I wanted to take at the beginning. So falling in love with the problem, falling in love with your stakeholder is very, very critical than falling in love with a solution. If you are going to fall in a solution, you are going to create your own trap, and then you are going to fail miserably, unfortunately. The third, of course, what Anbu spoke about is the 13 musical notes. He spoke about sepia, the decaf, and the van. This is absolutely critical for empathy. Now, what is empathy? If I ask empathy, I think the easily defined word in the world is empathy. Putting myself in somebody else's shoes. Seeing what the other person is saying, seeing what the other person is hearing. Excellent. This is the dictionary meaning of empathy, and this can be easily said. But how do you do it? But what is a step prior to putting yourself into somebody else's shoes? The step prior to putting yourself in somebody else's shoes is removing your shoes. Now, the ability to remove your shoes is all about sepia, decaf, and van. Do you question the assumptions? Do you question? Do you have a conflict? Do you win? What kind of fears you have? What kind of ego you have got? All those things are very, very critical. So empathy is all about, the first step of empathy, which is preparing the design mind, is all about removing the shoes first. It's metaphorical. Removing the shoes first, and then, getting into somebody else's shoes. Like Anbu said in the morning, you have to become the student rather than saying, I'm a faculty, I'm a teacher, let me think about the student's problem. No, that will not work. That means what is happening here is, you are looking at the problem as a faculty about a student. You will have to look at the problem of a student as a student. That is very, very critical. Now, you're going to tell me, is it possible? I'll definitely say yes. Is it going to take time? Yes, it's going to take a lot of time. But the solution will be a lasting solution. And that kind of empathy is very, very critical as far as design thinking is concerned. And this very, very, very radically differentiates between design thinking and any other kind of thinking, right? So this is the fundamental difference between design thinking and the rest of the kind of problem solving methods. Now, there is somebody who's not muted.
Just
Okay.
1 minute, participants, please mute yourself. We are getting a lot of domestic conversations creeping in. Thank you. Hello. Please mute yourself, participants. Hello, participants, please mute yourself. We are losing precious time. Thank you. Ramkisa, over to you.
Yeah. So the question here is design thinking something new? Like, somebody has suddenly found out or introduced or designed, are we getting succumbed to something which is very, very new? As far as the Indian civilization, Indian culture is concerned, I'll definitely say no. It is not something new. As a culture, historically, for eons and eons, we have been practicing this. And we have been very, very successful in practicing this. But unfortunately, for various reasons, we have gotten away ourselves from that, is what I would like to accuse of, including myself, everybody else as well. Now, this is a village setup. Now, how were villages existing maybe about 100, 200, 300 years before? Every village was self-sufficient. Every villager knew somebody else, everybody else in the village. If there was a happy occasion, or if there was a sad occasion, everybody came together. The village produced their own things. They consumed it within the entire thing. They were completely self-sufficient in terms of natural resources as well, right? And they were, whatever they did was indigenous to that particular village. So there was less dependence on somebody else. They had their own customized local customs and all those things. So that I call it as design thinking. So if you want me to give you an example, this is a classic example. This, in Tamil we call it as a kudam. This is a water storage container. Now, what is so beautiful or so nice about this kind of a design? This particular design, you store water and you can stack up water. Unlike the buckets we normally use today, which cannot be stacked up, this you can stack up with water, number one. The number two example, or number two characteristic I will say, is in case, for some reason this vessel falls down, not all water is going to get spilled down because of its, the design that it has been made of. Of course, some water will get spilled out, but not every water. Third, easy to carry. You can easily carry as a male. You can carry it in the hand. You can carry it in the head, and of course, it's easy to carry by a lady also, keeping this in her hip. And of course, you can see a lot of ladies stacking this kudam one upon the other on their head itself. And does this container get restricted only to storage of water? Definitely no. You can even draw water from the well. So what is so important, for drawing water in the well? What happens is, when the water level in the well is very, very low, you will have to be very mindful that the muck doesn't come up along with the water when you draw it from the well. When you use a bucket, a lot of muck comes up. Whereas if you use this, only the top portion of the filtered water comes and the muck doesn't come. So, and the other important thing is, unknowingly, even if it falls down into the well, for some reason, they while drawing the, from the pulley, the rope gets slipped or something like that. It falls down, head down, and then it doesn't sink. So these are the beautiful ways in which holistically a particular design has happened. So this is the way design has evolved, but unfortunately we have forgotten to appreciate it and then take it forward. So for me, this is a very, very classic design, a very archaic design, but still relevant even today. And this is how we have been surviving all these years. And at a later time, when we have sufficient time, we can always discuss. Every custom in India has been, we have intuitively applied design thinking, is what I feel, right? The third, sort of recent example, Thomas Alva Edison invented the electric bulb. There's a famous quote, right? I tried 20,000 times and, finally I got this electric bulb. Now, if Edison had invented just the electric bulb, we would not be having electric bulb today. He wanted to create an ecosystem out of it. Unless people were able to generate electricity and people are able to transmit electricity, which he could do in a controlled environment in his laboratory, this bulb would not have been industrialized. When I say industrialized, easily accessible to every person in the household, in a shop, in an industry, or wherever it is. So he was credited with generating electricity. He was credited with the technology of transferring or transmitting electricity as well. And that is the reason for creating an entire ecosystem. This electric bulb is still used today. I'll give you a contrarian example. Everybody probably, before the pandemic started, everybody has used, Ola, the cab, which we all, ask for wherever, in case we want to move from one place to the other. Ola Money is a beautiful example. You store up the money and then in your app, and then, you don't have to pay cash. You can just, get down as soon as a place comes up, and the app takes care of itself. It's a beautiful solution only from one stakeholder's point of view, from the rider's point of view. But if you look at from the driver's point of view, it is actually bad. You know why? Because the people who designed it did not look at it from the complete ecosystem point of view. What if the car is taken by the driver to a service shop? Will he be able to pay Ola Money there? No, he has to pay cash over there. That's not possible. What if the driver takes the car to the petrol pump to fill up a petrol or diesel? Will he be able to give Ola Money there and then fill up the tank? Not possible. Those people will not accept. So what happens is the usage of Ola Money gradually dwindled, and then as soon as you book a cab, the driver used to ask you, "Oh, you have Ola Money or cash?" When I say Ola Money, then he will cancel it. So when you design something, it has to be, you have to create an ecosystem out of it. It may take time, but once everybody starts to accept and appreciate, what happens is, it becomes viral and vastly accepted by people. And that is how design has to be. A good design has to be. Now, okay, now we have been doing it intuitively. How did we make a science out of it? How did it, become a way of doing things? It was first started by IDEO. Now, IDEO first started off it in 1978. And subsequently, they started, a single person, David Kelly, started it. And subsequently, what had happened is in 1991, the company called IDEO was formed, and they have been credited with a lot of beautiful, inventions or designs, like I should say. A couple of them, they were the first one to design the mouse for the first Apple Macintosh. They were the ones to design the shopping cart which stops when you release the lever. Once you release the lever, the shopping cart stops. Otherwise, what happens is, when you are going down the slope and it is filled with a lot of grocery and vegetables and other things, or even assuming a kid is sitting there, it will just keep sliding, and then either the kid will get hurt, or it will go and the cart will go and knock itself on a car which is parked in the parking lot or whatever. So there were a lot of issues with the existing design of the shopping cart. So they redesigned the shopping cart completely as to how you keep the small items, if you keep the larger item, how we keep the perishable items, how we keep the fragile items, and how I can automatically, charge by whatever I keep it in the shopping cart. So they came up with a beautiful design. The other lovely design which I love is the kid's toothbrush. Normally what we do is we get into a trap. If adults have a bigger toothbrush, kids will have and will need a smaller toothbrush. This is a beautiful trap that we all fall in by completely ignoring the fact as to how a kid will use a toothbrush. If you can all see me here, normally an adult holds the toothbrush like this. There is more emphasis on the thumb here, and the rest of the fingers are just for holding the handle of the toothbrush. Whereas a kid holds a toothbrush like this. So when the kid holds a toothbrush like this, so what happens is there is more pressure exerted by the bristles of the toothbrush on the teeth and the gum, and which thus injures the teeth and the gum of the kid. So what did IDEO do? They came up with a handle for the toothbrush which has got more rubber grip. When the grip is there, what happens is the kid will apply a lot of pressure, but the rubber grip will soak up all the pressure so that the teeth and the gums is not bleeding or it's not injured over there. So this is the kind of design that IDEO comes up, and they have come up with a lot of other designs. These are the product design. There's another called service design. I will request you all to go and Google what is Keep the Change for Bank of America. So all these designs IDEO was able to do by becoming that particular stakeholder and not just looking at a particular stakeholder. You need to become that stakeholder. That is absolutely critical. Design thinking. So can I apply design thinking to anything and everything? Definitely not. You cannot apply design thinking for anything and everything. Design thinking is for wicked problems. Now, what do you mean by wicked problem? When I say wicked problem, it is for a human-centric problem. When I say wicked problem, you have lots and lots of data, but you do not know what to do with that data. You have plenty of data, but you have no idea where to start and where to end. People have applied solution earlier, but it's definitely not working now, or new problems have come up. There are multiple stakeholders with their own agenda. And more importantly, we are trying to find a solution for a problem which we have not understood at all. First of all, we'll have to have a complete understanding of the problem first. Unless there is a clarity on the problem, we will never end up coming up with the correct or ideal solution. So design thinking is for wicked problems. If it's not a wicked problem, you can call that as a puzzle. Just a small puzzle. It could be a jigsaw puzzle, or just like the CAT MBA exam they ask. They ask 5 images are there. What's the 6th image? You don't have to apply design thinking for that. You need to apply design thinking for wicked problems where humans are involved. And like Anbu said, focus on the person facing the problem more than the problem itself. That is absolutely critical. And of course, we have been inspired by IDEO, and then we have come up with our own design center called 8012. And this design center is located at Siruseri in Chennai, which I believe some of you have already visited and seen. And once the pandemic gets over and situation becomes normal, I extend a welcome to all the other faculties. Whoever wants to come, please come and visit us. We would love to host you here. Now let us change track a bit. And see what are the various design approaches. We have a few Sardars here. What we are trying to tell is Sikhism. Guru Gobind Singh Ji actually applied design thinking very intuitively when there was a time to face the Mughal oppressors who were trying to take dominance of some parts of India at that point of time. What he did was he created an army with the current thing that we know as crowdsourcing. He took the eldest person from each family, eldest son from each family, and then he started mentoring them to become a warrior. Now, how did he do that? It's again a mindset issue. You can't expect every person to start fighting just because you have been chosen. Assuming his name was Param. Now, how he has to fight? He has to fight like a lion. So his name became Param Singh. And what he has to do by fighting, he has to win. So it became Paramjeet Singh. Now, if you are going to talk about it repeatedly, obviously what happens is you get transformed as that. So this is the way he created or marshaled a big army out of it, and then he was far successful. And not just that, he created an ecosystem also out of it in terms of the mindset. He said, you'll have to have those 5 Ks, Ganga, Kacha, Kripan, and, all those things, the 5 Ks. And obviously, the Kar Seva, what happens is, you'll have to be very, very humble. You'll have to, polish the shoes. You'll have to be part of the langar. You'll have to, cut the vegetables. You'll have to take away all the used plates and all those things. So the community aspect is what was far, far, far successful as far as this entire concept is concerned. Now, why are we talking about this? This is a beautiful example, an approach of a design by IDEO. Now, there is a human desirability. Technology has to make it feasible, and business has to make it viable, right? Now, 2 examples I'll give you. This Microsoft Teams, Google Meet, and Zoom, they were long there. They were there for a very, very long time. It's not that, they just suddenly cropped up during the pandemic season here. But technology was there. Was it viable then? Definitely not. But desirability was there to disseminate knowledge. So we are getting into that experience slowly. Of course, probably there is resistance from some quarters, but there is a kind of experience creation through all these things. So here, technology doesn't get restricted to this semiconductor things or a laptop or a mobile. There are a lot of other things that can be classified as technology. I will go on to say that, keeping the tables and chairs in their own way or creating a process could be a part of the technology. Technology doesn't necessarily mean anything to do with semiconductor devices. Another example, particularly in this part of the world, in southern India, the sun shines almost the majority of the calendar here. But are we able to tap it as eco-friendly energy? Definitely not, because there's a desirability for eco-friendly energy. The technology is there, the solar panels and everything is there, but the viability aspect is missing. Me sitting in a high-rise building in probably the 12th floor, now where do I keep it? Where do I keep the solar panels so that I get that experience? And what is the return on the investment that I'm making? So it has to have that experience for all the stakeholders. When a particular process is being brought up, for example, if you have this, academics, who are all the stakeholders? The stakeholder could be the student, stakeholder could be the management, stakeholder could be faculties like you. Stakeholder could be, or stakeholder is rather the parents, the stakeholder is the industry. The stakeholder is lot many other direct and indirect people. It has to be viable for everybody. Only then the experience will come. If the experience is not there, the idea becomes a failure. So this is one approach to a good design. This is the second example. We are going into the second approach here. This is the Devanagari script, Ka Kha Ga Gha. Here what happens is they have created an algorithm out of it. Each row here, the word when you pronounce, it originates from one part of your, the entire palate, the mouth. The K comes from the deep throat, Ch comes from the, the tongue touching here. The T comes more of the tongue touching the teeth. So they have created an algorithm in terms of how you pronounce a particular alphabet. And that probably leads to a lot of retention of words as well. So this is by Roger Martin. He talks about that's a problem, that's a mystery. We do not know what the problem is. We do not know what the solution is. We apply heuristic. It works at times, it doesn't work at other times. We do our own way of solving the problem. But ultimately, it has to be an algorithm. When I say algorithm is not just, I repeat, not just repeatability. It is scalability and predictability as well. You cannot keep reinventing just because the scenario changes or the stakeholder change, right? It has to become an algorithm. For example, just think about any call center for a bank or an insurance company. They'll ask you 4 or 5 questions and they will actually come up to an algorithm. Some of the hotels, you go to any hotel, in that chain of hotel, you will get the same taste all over the place. Same way, it was an algorithm which made McDonald's very, very famous. So making it as an algorithm is very, very important, critical, and paramount. Third example, this is the South Indian food. Now, South Indian food has been designed in such a way that it adapts to the local climatic culture. Here, what happens is there is so much of heat that the food gets spoiled probably the same day itself. If you make a idli batter, the dough gets fermented so soon that you're not able to do anything further with it. So this was a classic case of making a problem or a constraint your own friend. So what they did was they analyzed a lot of things. They must have done it for over a period of time. When I say this particular example, it didn't happen last year or 10 years back or even 500 years back. This must have happened about 5,000 or even 10,000 years back. What they did was they made the problem of fermentation their own. They made the problem of fermentation as a friend. So first day they used to make idli, the second day they used to make dosa, the third day they made uttapam, and of course the uttapam still would be very, very sour, so they would have added a lot of vegetables or any other masala on the top, and whatever still is left they used to make the kuri paniyaram, as this part of the world knows it. So this is how you need to leverage all these things. So this is a classic case. And how did they come about with it? This is a definition which in intellect design arena, in School of Design Thinking, we have come up our own. You'll have to understand the requirements, the stated requirement, the unstated requirement. Now, what is the difference between stated and unstated? Stated is, you go and ask a stakeholder, you go and ask a parent, what do you expect from the student because he or she is going to study engineering or medicine or a particular arts branch in our college. They might say, I want a degree, I want my kid to get a job. But that's probably a stated requirement. But what is the unstated requirement of the parent is very, very critical. Why does a particular parent want their kid to study in a particular college or a particular stream? It's not just because of getting a job or getting a certificate. There is much, much more beyond that, which is the unstated requirement. The unstated requirement is not just because, the parent is probably withholding it by themselves. It's unstated because the parent themselves doesn't know that it's a requirement. So that we call it as a blind spot. I do not know that I do not know. Frankly, I do not know swimming, but that's not a blind spot for me because I know that I do not know that. There are a lot of things that I do not know that I do not know. That is a blind spot. An unstated requirement is more emotional in nature most of the time than being very functional. For example, the parent would actually want their kid to be a model student, a great citizen of the country, right? And probably come up with some innovative ideas. These are the unstated requirements as far as the parent is concerned. There could be a lot of unstated requirements as far as the industry is concerned. There's a lot of unstated requirement as far as the student is concerned or the management is concerned, or even you are concerned as a faculty. There could be an unstated requirement for you. But the question is, good, this is all nice, if only I knew the unstated requirement, I would definitely deliver the unstated requirement. How do I find out what the unstated requirements is? You'll have to look at the patterns and anti-patterns. That's a famous saying, right? 1 is an incidence, 2 is a coincidence, and 3 is a pattern. You'll have to look at the patterns of what has been happening about that particular student or about that particular stream or about that particular industry or about the particular college, how that alumni has been behaving. Lot of patterns be there. And what is the difference between pattern and anti-pattern? Patterns is what is going on well, and anti-patterns is actually what is not going on well. So you need to note down, observe all these things and look at the patterns. Of course, many of you are doctors here, and you would have written your research papers by obviously intuitively looking at patterns here. You know, when you had written your research paper, you would have seen these are the patterns. So obviously I'm looking at this. So observing patterns is very, very important. And that is why the base for that Anbu said in the morning was listening, dialogue, and observation. You'll have to listen. You'll have to listen to that particular stakeholder as if there is no one else in the world. Only you two are existing. You will have to listen not just what the person is saying, but also what the person is not saying. You will have to listen to the pauses between the sentence and the words. So you'll have to listen to the body language of the stakeholder. So listening is, like I read in some book, they say listening is a soft skill. It's actually a very, very difficult to practice hard skill. Because by the time somebody is saying something, you know, my process is already running. What should I answer? I know this guy is coming to say this, you know, I should quickly, you know, talk about this. I should immediately counter this person by saying this. So that's how my mind goes many of the times. So if I am going to be dispassionate over here, if I am going to avoid any prejudice or preconceived notion, I will observe a lot of patterns and anti-patterns. And I'll have to connect within the box and outside the box. When you're connecting within the box, the difference between the fundamental difference between these two is, how do I connect? Am I connecting within this particular sphere, or am I getting inspiration from outside as well? Now, that's a very famous example about Arvind Eye Care. You know, those of you have heard of Arvind Eye Care. Arvind Eye Care connected outside the box and modeled themselves on McDonald's. And that's why they are able to create an algorithm out of whatever they were doing. They did not model themselves on another eye care or another hospital. So this is absolutely critical as far as, you know, coming up with a great solution or a great design is concerned. So there is a stated requirement, there is an unstated requirement. And how do you unearth that? By patterns and anti-patterns. And only then what happens is the blind spots can be unearthed. And once the blind spots are unearthed, you are a completely different person as far as your competitor is concerned. The unstated requirements, which is a result of, you know, unearthing the blind spot, keeps you definitely apart as far as the other people in the same industry or your competitors are concerned, your peers are concerned. So unstated requirements, which are mostly emotional in nature, is absolutely critical. Coming back, the differentiator between you know, design thinking and traditional thinking. Now, this was handled by Anbu in the morning session, so I'm not going into a lot of animation here. If you look at the right side of it, you know, the design thinking portion, it will be all human centric. What is the right question? More listening, more understanding the story, more about experience, talking about the feelings. They are all about human centric. You have to be human centric the way it has to be understood far better to come up with a particular solution. Let me take you back to the pre-COVID era, when there was a lot of talk happening about you know, the automobile industry going down drastically. People are not buying vehicles. Now, people are not buying vehicles. It was purely a data. It was a data which was telling that people were not buying vehicles. Now, what were people attributing that to? Their own interpretation of the data. Some said it was a GST because of which it was not coming. Some said it is the millennials who are not interested in buying, vehicles. Some said it was because of the petrol and diesel rates. And of course, some said it was because of the second-hand market. Some said it is because of the government's policy about electric vehicles. Nobody had a definitive grasp on what the problem actually was. They were relying completely on the data. Of course, data understood approach is very, very important than being just a data-driven solution or data-driven approach. Now, did anybody actually ask a particular car buyer as to why you are buying a car or why are you not buying a car? Did the bank, the insurance company, and the franchisee, the car maker has their own franchisee, all these people, did they come together and have a dialogue? Right? Why is a particular, the first-hand car not being sold? Is second-hand car being sold? These are the kind of stories that we require. These are the kinds of experience that is required to solve the problem, rather than just being data-driven and then say that, the data says the cars are not being sold, so there is a problem. So we'll have to apply the design thinking by understanding what the right question is, listen to the stakeholders more, listen to the market more, understand the story, understand the experience, and talk about the feelings, which is absolutely critical. And now, there are 4 images here: the migrant laborers, farmers, primary school children, and policymakers here. Is design thinking relevant today, particularly for the the post-pandemic time? Definitely yes. So if you look at the migrant laborers here, you look at the IDEOS approach. Do we ask what is their desirability? Because India is considered to be a third world country, and then we treat the migrant laborers as a third-rate citizen. And now we are heavily dependent on them, and we are trying to bring them back to major cities, particularly Chennai, Bangalore, Mumbai, Hyderabad, Gurgaon, then the NCR region. What is the desirability of a migrant laborer? When I say desirability, you come to this approach. What is the stated requirement? What is the unstated requirement of a migrant laborer? Asking these or unearthing these is very, very critical, without which we will never be able to solve the migrant problem. So migrant problem will always be a problem which is going to keep bubbling, and then we will never know how this is going to explode. They may take approach to the antisocial activities, or they may end up committing suicide, or they may be into abject poverty, or they may get into some other activities. But understanding the stated and unstated requirements is very, very critical. The desirability aspect is very, very critical. Once you unearth that, we can find what is feasible and what is viable for all those things. This is absolutely important as far as the migrant laborers are concerned. Now, coming to farmers. Now, farmer is a person who we have been treating them with contempt for a very, very long period of time. Whenever there is a farmer issue, immediately some government or the other says we'll have to waive the loans that they have taken. Now, does waiving the loan solve their problems? Probably no, because still farmer suicides are happening. Why? Probably the farmer wants to return the money that the farmer has taken as a loan. They are probably degrading their self-image by waiving of the loan. Hence, understanding what patterns are there about a farmer, what kind of produce is happening, what is the monsoon, who is buying it, who is reselling it, how does it get packaged, what are the various ways the price gets jacked up, and all those things. those patterns and anti-patterns are very, very critical if you are going to solve a particular farmer's problem. Otherwise, what happens is that 2 rupee produce, some farmer will get just 1 rupee 50 paisa, but we will all end up paying about 20 rupees or 25 rupees for the same thing. And of course, it's going to be, a very obsolete product, 10 days old product we might be buying, and then, we might be thinking that we are buying the best product. So empathizing with the farmer by becoming the farmer is very, very critical in finding a solution for the farmers. The third is, the school children. I mean, I have specifically said primary school children here. Now, post the pandemic, what is happening is, the online classes have started, and online classes is there for play school. Online classes is there for, primary school, for higher secondary school. In fact, let me be honest here. My son wrote the 10th standard exam last year. And even before the result came, based upon his choice, the 11th standard, classes started, and the teachers started taking the, syllabus here. Now, what is actually happening here is, of course, this is not something that the academicians or the school or everybody has deliberately gone online. There is a situation that has prompted them to go online. If you take the specific case of primary school children, what is the primary requirement of a primary school children? Is it the covering of the syllabus, or is it something else which a student should have, or that particular age group of kids should have, so that their adolescent, their teenage, their subsequent career is far, far, far greater? Or are we just, trying to communicate something? One, I am asked to do, this is what I know, and this is what the student should know. So these are the kind of questions that we need to ask ourselves, particularly with respect to primary school children. I right now recollect of my conversation with a big university vice chancellor. What he was saying is, every faculty comes and tells me that I have covered a particular syllabus. Now I tell them, the vice chancellor says that I tell the particular faculty that there's no point in you covering the syllabus. You'll have to uncover the syllabus as far as the student is concerned. When you uncover the syllabus, the student understands. So this is where the shift from teaching to making the student learn happens. Rather than saying that, my job is done and then, it is up to the student now. Though fortunately or unfortunately, whether we like it or not, the onus of learning now, particularly in the online education, it has shifted from the classroom, from the faculty to the student. It is the onus is now on the student whether to learn or not. Because most of the time what happens is whether the student is in front of the laptop, or is it the student or the student's parent or the grandparent is sitting there taking notes, we have no idea. Whether the student has understood the particular concept, we have no idea. At least earlier in the classroom, we had the facial expression, to understand whether a student has understood or not. But right now, there is no way. So this will start reflecting, maybe 1 year or 2 years down the line, particularly when you have the board exam or the campus interviews happening all this time. But it's probably too late for the student in this particular age group. Is it right on our part to blame the student? I will say no. We will have to educate or inculcate that habit of learning as far as the student is concerned, and that is very, very critical. And that onus is on us, on people like you, me, and everybody else. So that is very, very important. So what about the emotional aspect of a primary school kid? What about the playing aspect of the primary school kid? So all these things are very, very important, and we need to be very mindful about the desirability and the stated and unstated requirements and what the patterns in the industry is. That's very, very important. And the other thing which, we are very, very closely working with government right now is, we are working with a lot of government industries, both at the state level, at the central level as well, the policy makers. When I say policy makers, I include the elected representative, the nominated representative, and even the bureaucrats as well. When they form a particular law, when they frame a particular policy, they'll have to do it in such a way that it appeals to all the stakeholders. So that's what Anbu was talking about in the morning, that when they defined or the framed the NEP, was the industry taken into account? Was the alumni taken into account? So these are the questions that we have. So design thinking helps. There are a lot of tools as far as applying design thinking is concerned. You have the journey map, you have the persona, you have the the other tools as well, and of course the most important tool, in my opinion, storytelling. These are the tools which will help communicate, which will help understand, which will help empathize very deeply, very effectively as far as applying solutions for wicked problems. Whatever is here, everything is a wicked problem. You have plenty of data. You have tried solution in the past. It has not worked completely. So we are unfortunately treating these emotional problems as puzzles. We'll have to apply design thinking to come up with a very, very effective solution. And that is why, if you see at Intellect Design Arena, we have a design center, which is about 30,000 square feet area, purely to inculcate and then sustain the concept of design thinking. Now, if I just have that space, will that be sufficient? Definitely not. No, along with that space, you'll have to have a design mind, which Anbu talked about earlier in the day about the 13 musical notes. The design mind is very, very important. That design mind, if it's not there, then whatever process you have will become like an A plus B whole square. You will substitute A, you will substitute B, you will get an answer. You will spend a lot of time, energy, effort in that. But ultimately what will happen is the problem will still remain. So these 4 jigsaw puzzles coming together is very, very important. Only then you can create an ecosystem out of it. The design space is very, very important. You can create a process, but if you don't give that kind of space to the people to work, if you don't give all those gadgets for people to work, they will not be able to come up with the correct solution or understanding of the correct problem. So design mind, design space, the design process, and the framework. You'll have to create the framework. Otherwise, people will go haywire. Their own understanding of the problem, their own scoping of the problem. We don't want that. So all these things coming together will create a beautiful ecosystem. And this is, some couple of photographs of our design center, which I said, you're all welcome to come and visit. And like Dr. Sudipto said earlier in the day, it's all about co-creation. You talk about agile, you talk about, any other problem-solving approach. You'll have to co-create along with all the stakeholders. There was a case when we were working, one college included the librarian also while framing the course curriculum. So that's the kind of co-creation that we are looking at. When you co-create, blind spots will come up automatically. You'll start unearthing the blind spots. Otherwise, what happens is, I am going to find a problem, I am going to understand the problem in my own way, and then I'm going to find a solution, and then later on, it will be a big, big failure. So co-creation is absolutely paramount, and this is the design center, which we call it as a 8012 FinTech Design Center, which is at Siruseri just on the outskirts of Chennai. And of course, this book written by our chairman called Unmukt. Unmukt is a Hindi word for boundaryless. When I say boundaryless, you normally what happens is I put my own obstacle here and say, this is what I can think of. Can I think without the boundary? That's an oft-quoted example of our chairman. He says, when I observe birds of various species sitting in a particular tree, they don't fight with each other. But he says when I put 3 or 4 leaders in a room, they start fighting with each other. Why is that? Now, he is not trying to demean or degrade the leaders that are there in our organization. But there is a lot of difference of opinion. But birds of different species, including migratory birds, sit in one tree and they don't have any animosity with each other. The reason he says is the birds live in 3-dimensional space, humans and animals live in a 2-dimensional space. Now, how do I develop that kind of a 3-dimensional thinking is all what is Unmukt. Now, there is a science to it. You have tools. There is a lot of tools available. The book talks about a lot of tools. When you apply the tool, it becomes a science. Okay, I applied the tool, you apply the tool, somebody else applies the tool. Can I create an artificial intelligence out of it? Probably you can, but again, it will be an A plus B whole square, like I said. It will become an art when you start getting the insights out of the tool that you have used. That's why we say it's science first and then an art. It has to get culminated into an art. When it becomes an art, you make that particular tool your own. You own up that particular tool. That is what is called science and art of design thinking. Unless it becomes yours, it's not going to be of any use to you. It's like filling up a feedback form. I have filled it. No use to anybody at all. So this particular book is available for now during this pandemic period, free of charge to all the participants here. The URL is given below. You can just go to this URL. You will get a similar screen like here, and then give the necessary details, and you can download this book. So you'll have a lot of insights from this book, and we would love to hear feedback from you. And with this, I end my session. I hope I have made the points which I came to make. If there are questions, I would love to take.
Ramakrishnan sir, fantastic. You came with some points to make, but we have more points to get from you. Okay. And as usual, full of energy, full of passion, and I learned a lot again. I will take the audacity and privilege of asking one question as usual, the first one to set the ball rolling. It is pandemic now. We understand that the future is going to be perfect, but it is future perfect present tense. Now, if it is future perfect present tense and the past perfect present tense again, so how to bridge between the concept of an information driven economy and a pandemic recovering economy, because there are a lot of industries which are facing real challenges like recovery. See, I am working with startups which keeps on saying that, sir, we should have a virtual startup now, no longer real startup will work. So there are a lot of people who are telling that the e-marketplace will be the marketplace of the future. When everything shuts down, then e-market only remains open. Now, my question is very simple. We understood that online and offline both will be combined to offer the future generation education. But do you think that e-learning, with all its inherent shortcomings, is going to satisfy really the learning and the teaching process? Because you are a fantastic teacher, but if I would have given you a chance to interact offline, don't you think you would have done much better than today? So do you think that really the digital economy can really be a transition from brick and mortar to click and mortar service businesses? Okay. Manufacturing can't be done. Manufacturing can't be done. Everything in click and mortar, we understand. But does all service is prone from brick and mortar to click and mortar? If not, why not? If so, why?
Okay. Let me start off by first of all saying that, you started off with e-marketplace. Let me tell you, though Amazon started off their business, virtually, they are also coming up with brick and mortar shops now. Of course, India it has not come, but definitely in US and Europe you have Amazon brick and mortar shops. Now, do they sell anything and everything there? No, they are trying to give that experience there so that people continue to buy more and more online. So they are leveraging the brick and mortar shop more and more. Now, this is one example on the side. Now, if you are going to ask me, will you want to do a classroom session, an offline session, or an online session? Even in the middle of the night, if you wake me up, I will say classroom session only. Without a doubt. I am completely with you on that. I have no, no two ways about it. Do rai nahi hai. Having said that, now a big constraint has been thrown upon us. Do we wait until the entire pandemic gets over and then, we start at that point of time? Or we continue to keep the ball rolling is the question here. Now, how do I leverage the constraint? How do I be mindful of the constraint that I have today? And then ensure that the output that I am supposed to deliver to the particular student or to the parent whom I am answerable because he or she is paying me fees gets the desired outcome. Have I to put more effort? Probably yes. Have to take some other route? Probably yes. I'll have to have more buy-in from the stakeholder? Probably yes. So these are the ways that I have to look into from giving the desired output and say that, the online is completely bad or, it's not going to give the desired output. Today, whether I appreciate online or not, all syllabus of the best of the faculties is available online. The student can go and understand the particular topic. It can be engineering, it can be medicine, it can be arts, it can be design thinking, it can be anything for that matter from the best of the people in the industry. So I am looking at maybe in the 10 years down the line, I'm looking at a big disruption as far as the academics is concerned. Of course, people may like me, people may not like me by saying this, but today you have this QS ranking, you have this NIFR, this national ranking, right?
Right.
We will stop having rankings for colleges. We will start having rankings for faculties.
Right.
We will say, I learned this particular topic, semiconductor devices, from QS ranking 3 faculty. That faculty could be in Gumadipundi, that faculty could be in Greenland, that faculty could be in Australia, that faculty can be anywhere. So this guy will come up with a certificate. So this is where we are going in. This is the disruption that we have to look into.
No, I am still not convinced because in the morning Anbu sir was talking about D-Cafe, the 5 frictional forces. Now here we are now 133 educators present in this forum. I think those who have gone full-fledged online this semester to teach their courses, they find a problem. Classroom has gone inside the dining room, bedroom. Problem is whether the attention span of the students, whether it is school kids, college students or university students, it is really a challenge for the faculty members that I am using simulation, I am using some activity-based learning. Can I really do it in online perfectly? So you wake up in the night to take a class offline. I remain woken up throughout the day to take offline classes only. Online has put me in an uneven pressure that really can I deliver what I am supposed to deliver to my fullest potential. I think my all faculty friends out here will agree with me about the constraints. So I don't think online MBA, online MCA will not make proper managers. It will create some damages also. Sorry, in the bad way I am telling, but the thing is that, but I would now listen to some of the participants and their questions. So the forum will be opening up to the participant. Ramkrishnan sir, I will get back to you because I have so many questions. I am a very bad student. I ask so many questions.
No. Any person having question is the best student.
Okay, fine. I want to know more better students than me among the participants now, as far as Ramkrishnan sir. So over to participants, raise your hands. And if you want, you can put your question in the chat box also. Ramkrishnan sir, you can just now, denounce your control so that I can have a control now.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yes. Now I need to see the participants raising their hand to ask their questions. Participants, over to you. I want to see who all wants to ask questions. Okay.
Hello.
So, yes, Milind Singh sir, your question to Ramki sir.
Sir, as we are talking about since morning, we are talking about design thinking, and we have moved about design thinking also. Suddenly, as the academic fraternity from March, entire mindset have changed. Entire mindset have changed. We have designed, we have rethink, and done it. And we are just waiting. Believe me, the entire academic and the student community are waiting. The moment government will say everything is okay, we all will come down. The way move without any thinking, again without any thinking, we'll go back to the same thing.
Fantastic.
Now, my question is to you, sir, that emotion has gone. There's no emotion. Though we say that we are doing everything online, today we are celebrating something, our classes are happening, simulation happening. There are so many courses because I'm also in charge of tourism hospitality. There is so many practical things that we can't share. Parents are so unhappy. So now you tell me only one thing, sir, how to create emotion during the class and after and before. We are just like, like Corona has not affected physically, but mentally it has killed like anything. It has killed like anything. There is no Saturday and Sunday. Even the Sundays is there. You cannot take out your family to go outside and enjoy something. So how to create emotion with the students and connect, emotional connect? Because admission is also one of the biggest challenge that we are facing this time. Parents are not ready. So please suggest something on emotional connection.
Very good question, I think.
Milind sir, first of all, the question has come from your heart. I can see the anxiety and anguish in the way you articulated and the way you narrated it. But having said that, do I have an answer? Is there an answer? I have my doubts that there are no answers for now. But having said that, one thing which is in my control, or rather in your control, and that the steps that you can take is talk to the students. I'm not saying start implementing what the student says. Talk to students, have a free chat as far as what the expectations are. Probably have a couple of chats with some of the parents, definitely not all the parents, with some of the parents, but definitely with all the students one-on-one. You will definitely get some insights as far as your area of control or your area of grasp is there. This is one solution that I can think of, but there is no algorithmic solution saying that you do this, everything will be hunky-dory and everything will be solved. No, I am not here to lie. I am not here to tell a thing. It's very difficult. This has suddenly been thrown on us. The pandemic was thrown on us, and the first to get affected is the academic industry, and what is having a lasting effect is also the academic industry.
Milind Singh sir and Ramki sir, I just wanted to say something here. I recently did a virtual workshop. I named the workshop Beyond Classroom Bridging Minds. So we don't learn always by brain. You don't learn from a teacher whom you don't like. You always love to learn from a teacher whom you love and like both. So, what has happened recently? I was taking a class of lean startup manufacturing, and these doesn't have exams. These only have to produce, I was telling in the dry run workshops, that you have to produce some prototypes of some pain points you have located of the solutions. This is all about design thinking. You know what happened? At 12 o'clock in the night, the group of students who are in Microsoft team discussing about a solution, they induced me in the team. They invited me, I'm telling you, and they told, sir, you don't sleep now. You have kept us woken up. Now you have to be kept awake so that you give us solutions and become a person to judge us. And I did it, I learned so much from that 8 students. they taught me that how they look at their world. We don't look in that way. Our world is our world, their world is their world. Do we look at their world in the way they look at their world? So understanding a teacher's mind aligned with a student's mind is something also to be thought differently now. I hope I am making some sense. Because
Absolutely.
Generation
Right,
gap has to be managed. Generation gap has to be managed. And I'm telling you, kids does not want to be taught. Kid nowadays wants to learn, not to push feed. It's only pulling, attracting, not pushing knowledge. Knowledge is lying everywhere in Google. Google is the guru. The best guru is Google. But what is more required is thought provocation. What is more required is disruption in the thinking process and think something anew. So underwater drone, I was telling them how you can fight it out. Any problem, man-made disaster in the sea, oil spillages, saving marine lives. So we thought about underwater drones, which looks like fish. Okay. Anyway, over
Thank
to,
you, sir.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Debarshi Mukherjee, sir, it's your
Yes,
turn.
yeah, thank you. So, firstly, I'll congratulate you. Guys, wonderful presentation, Mr. Ramakrishnan, sir. And that unearthing blind spot reminded me of studying Johari Windows when we were MBA students, and it came out very well. And actually, I work in Tripura, and it's a government institutions. I do not know whether many of you would be knowing or not knowing the constraints the government institutions do face. Many of our students come from extremely rural background with very humble financial background. Even affording a smartphone is a challenge. That is, people may be residing in cities. For them, it's a very challenging task. For them, affording a copy is in a higher education sector. I'm giving the example. My students sometimes, 3,000 MBA fees they're unable to pay. That's a challenge that they're facing. So, I mean, the questions which have come forth so far is very interesting. But my question would be to you. So, because in your presentation, one thing I found was lacking is the human touch, because that needs. I mean, each student needs it today, because technology, you cannot touch them. A little bit of empathetic. I think Anbu sir was talking about empathy. So what I personally need to understand is how do we bridge that gap? Because I can motivate a student to think differently, because I have seen a lot of teachers during this interim putting tremendous effort in innovating new ways to teach them, but then touching their lives the way with the subject. So that's a very challenging task, and I am personally facing the hit but not being able to close to them. Exams are being postponed. I think we all know they are feeling this thing because the syllabus is not being able to complete. But how do we do that? Because if we run 6 hours of classes every day, their data pack will be over. They cannot afford it. Then there are rains, there are landslides happening in these places. So in these conditions, what would be your prescription? How do we touch them? How do we connect with them? It's not about technologically connect, but personal connect. So what would be your response on that? Thank you.
Once again, this is a question which is going to, be a classroom discussion, or maybe a workshop kind of a thing. Not necessarily a classroom. Classroom is probably incorrect. This is a workshop kind of a thing where people, like-minded people like you, who come together, and then we understand what the patterns and anti-patterns are, who the stakeholders are, and then arrive at a thing. But again, for such economically privileged, backward people, and then trying to get that, and then I have my own agenda also, because somebody is sitting on my head, mera gala pakd raha hai, and I'll have to do it. So, I'll have to balance a couple of things. Frankly, we'll have to, design thinking is something is commonly accused as a time-consuming problem-solving approach. I definitely agree to that. But having sincerely approached that particular problem-solving approach, you will have a very, very lasting solution. All right. So that is where it is. Now, coming back specifically to your, area of expertise, wherein you're dealing with students who have, very, very limited access to technology. When I say technology, both the handheld device and the connectivity as well. So these are the assumptions which our government has made. So if classroom is not there, immediately I'll move to mobile, just because the sales of the mobile handset has gone up, so much manifold in the last few years. So everybody has a mobile. If everybody has a mobile, then I can communicate all these things. So that's a wrong assumptions probably some people have made. But solution we'll have to discuss. You ask me right now, probably I don't have an answer. Let me be very honest with you. I'm not going to tell you saying that do this. I don't have an answer, frankly.
I understand that there are a lot of bodyline series going on, lot of very strong deliveries coming, and our defense are falling. So Professor Mukherjee, fantastic question, and real life issues with online are always there, and I think everything can't be eliminated in a non-digital India. We have a digital divide in India. We have to agree and live with that. The haves and the have-nots, the rural and the urban divides, the digital and the non-digital world in India. So there is a gap. Professor Saptarshi, it's your turn now.
Yeah, thank you, sir, for the wonderful deliberation. I would just like to contrary to one point that the problem for students is attaining skill, and attaining attitude for learning or creation. So the problem pre and post COVID has not changed. I think we have become too much of dependent on online or offline thing, that we are not able to manage this change, and as correctly said, we instead of loving the problem, we love the solution, and we have become so happy saying that online class, blended learning is the future. So we are more focusing on the solution that we have come up, rather than going to the depth of the problem, because the problem remains the same. And moreover, socially, I would like to give an example. One of my student I'm a faculty of microbiology. So one of my student one day came up to me, sir, there is a camp going on COVID-19. Shall I join them? I said, definitely, that's the best way you can contribute to the society and learn the subject. So he went there for collection of sample with the PPE and everything. But our management, our system, our society, that requires a change, because that will help the student to learn the better way, rather than sitting in front of a mobile or a laptop for 4 hours of lecture. So we have to create a division of barrier from our mind, that I feel is more necessary, whether it's administrative boundary or a social boundary, rather than trying to put a very easy solution to a problem that was always there and is and will be there. That's I would seek your suggestion in this.
Yeah, you have brought out very nicely, Saptarishi sir. For example, when you allow a particular student to do what he likes to do, or he or she likes to do. Now, one aspect of it is whether that will give extra learning in the subject that you are teaching, say microbiology. Probably not. Having said that, will the student be more aligned to your thought process? Definitely yes. Tomorrow, he will look up to you as a role model, as a mentor, and he will look up to you. I have a problem. Can you help me, sir? You have been so helpful in taking care of me. So this is where the persona template comes in. Now, there is one thing like, don't waste your time, don't go there and all those things. And the other thing is, trying to create that pull effect, saying that, oh, you love doing this, you do this. We will learn at a later point of time and how do we do this. This is where that's a design thinking tool called persona, where we discuss about a particular stakeholders, what motivates a particular stakeholder, what are the challenges of a particular stakeholder, what aspirations are there for a particular stakeholder. So you will have to document all these things by deep observation, and then you can pull the stakeholder to your side.
Right. We have another 10 to 12 minutes to go. I will take as many as possible questions, but Ramki sir, please, for you, the answer also has to be short. So Dr. Neetu Singh, ma'am, your chance now, and then Dr. Basi. I'll come back to Dr. Basi after Dr. Neetu Singh.
Thank you, sir, for making us understand this basically about the patterns and I will quickly ask the question. The main thing is that we are in such a situation. I will not say that the online classes or something like that is just a situation because COVID is going. Before COVID, we were quite appreciating the online classes and we were being pushed also to take, like later on. Now we are just contradicting it. Some are in oppose of it and some are liking it. So there are many problems. The main thing is, suppose something is based on data driven. For example, you have given an example of vehicles as well as the farmer problems which we have given. So in those cases, we see many types of patterns, situations. So is there that it should not be based on data driven, or it's just something, sometimes it's a temporary cases are there, or that patterns are not quite giving the complete problems, or the picture of the problem which is present in that. So where we will apply this design thinking approach in such kind of situations? My question is there, because again, if you say about the online classes, again there is a confusion whether to continue in future or not. After 1 year, what is going to happen? Because uh, here,
Right.
is it for a long term solution or something like that?
Right. Ramki sir.
Okay.
Quickly, I heard that. Dr. Neetu Singh, beautiful answer. What I will recommend you to do is, go back to your workplace. I mean, when I say workplace, get like-minded faculties like you, and get couple of students as well. Maybe 10 faculties and 4 or 5 students. Create a virtual meeting, and then take a topic, say online classes. Write down what all is working fine. Each person has to write at least 5. Start documenting what all is working fine and what all is not working fine. I will stop with this and I will tell you, when you see about 50 or 60 patterns and anti-patterns, what is working and what is not working, you will get a lot of insights. I would request you to do this exercise maybe in the next week or so, and then, if possible, please reach out to me and I will be able to help you further. This is very, very critical. Like-minded faculties like you, couple of students as well, what is working, what is not working with respect to online classes. Please do that.
Right. So we got the assignment for Dr. Neetu Singh from Dr. Gulabji. Now, Dr. Basi, it's your turn, and I request others to just lower their hand. I am thinking that still they have questions. So it's one question person. Dr. Basi, your turn, then Dr. Milind Singh.
Thank you for the excellent presentation, Mr. Ramakrishnan. My first is a small comment on the COVID situation all of us teachers are so worried about. I would like to take it in this view that it is a time for us to transit from teaching dominated to a little more learning dominated. I won't say completely learning dominated, but a little more learning dominated. So if you try to do teaching through this online media, then a lot of constraints come, because whatever we are trying to do face to face, we are trying to do everything through online. But then when we move to the learning, then we just have to facilitate, aid, and not intervene so extensively as we do in teaching. Then this media constraints reduce. I think that is the case. My question was regarding this anti-patterns. Like you said, the word you use, what I don't know, I don't know. So what I can't find in patterns, I can't find it. So how do I get a grip on these anti-patterns?
Yeah, basically, sir, basically, sir, patterns is what is working well, and anti-patterns is what is not working well for you. The insights out of these will be unearthing the blind spots. That's what I was trying to communicate. The insight out of which, what is working well and what is, see, that's what I told Dr. Neeta also. If I'm always going to observe the pattern from my perspective alone, that may not work. I need to get the perspective from various other faculties, from students as well. Only then I can understand the pattern far better. I can understand what is not working better. Maybe there is a learning for me from some other faculty in understanding the particular problem situation, or I am doing something much better which the other faculty can learn from me. It can be vice versa. that multiple perspective approach is very, very important, and that is what will lead to unearthing the blind spots.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Hello.
I believe Dr. Sudipto got dropped.
So Ramki, you could ask the other ones to go. They have raised I see four of them have raised hands.
No, I believe that those people have not brought their. So what is that? Yeah, there is a question here. What is the constraints of design thinking and preconditions to use it? Okay. Well, coming to the second part of the question, what are the preconditions to use it? It is, absolutely an open mind. When I say open mind, willing to ask questions and allowing others to ask questions. Questioning the assumptions, that is very, very critical as far as the preconditions is concerned, for anybody for that matter. You have to form a team of people who can work collaboratively together, and then allow others to ask questions. If somebody has a divergent view, respect that view, and then understand from what perspective the other person is coming. All those things are the preconditions. With respect to constraints, I don't know. The only constraint is probably the time it's going to take, but it's going to give you a exponential effect subsequently. That's probably the only constraint that I see with respect to the usage of design thinking and implementing it.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
And very good afternoon to all the participants. My question is pertinent to the students that normally MBA students, they used to go for this summer internship project. Somewhere there in some industry, and practically they are getting exposed to what they are taught at the classroom. But today, this summer internship that they asked to go to some topic so that they can write their own. So how this design thinking is going to help them so that we can make them more practical oriented so that we can implement. Please, sir.
Okay, Ramkesh, sir, just one. I think we are running short of time. So you remember Subrat Chaudhary sir's question, no? Just now he asked. I will take two more questions because so many hands are up. Alia Sultana ma'am, your question please. Ramkesh sir, you have to remember one or two questions because we are running short of time.
Yes,
Alia ma'am, yes.
Right. Yes, sir. Sir, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
And it was wonderful information which we had. My question is, like, when you're talking about unstated needs, normally when the seller sells the good, he has to take care of the stated as well as unstated needs also. Like, suppose a family can fulfill their need by having a small car, but they prefer to buy a luxury car also. They might be using the small car daily, but the luxury car is for some other purpose. That is, we talk in marketing as the latent need or hidden need. Then you said that, but how do we call that as a blind spot? In your presentation, you were saying that is what I don't know what I don't know. So that was not clear to me. And my second question is, what is the difference between out of the box thinking and design thinking?
Okay. Quickly answering your the first question. Blind spot is something that gets unearthed by observing more patterns. The more blind spot that you unearth, that leads to your better understanding of unstated requirements. The unearthing the blind spot gets translated into unstated requirements is more emotional in nature. That is what I meant. There's no direct correlation between the two. And with respect to out of the box thinking is more metaphorical. You rather than without being constrained to a particular thing, and then you have to think outside the box. Some people say think as if there is no box. Now, if you are going to be human centric, you are going to apply the tools of design thinking, you can say design thinking is out of the box thinking. Now, out of the box thinking doesn't have any scope, it doesn't have any tools, it doesn't have any structure, but design thinking has got evolved out of it. Now, there is a science and art to out of the box thinking, which is called design thinking.
So design thinking is a systematic way.
Absolutely.
Isn't it? Out of the box thinking can be general.
It's out of the box thinking can be non-human centric as well. Design thinking is purely human centric.
Human centric. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, a small input here. Out of the box thinking always does not consider any set norms. I think it's non-systematic totally. So it can come a solution from another industry for a different industry out of the box. So anyway, we can talk on it at length. Subrat Chaudhary sir's question, Ramki sir, was unanswered. He was asking something on internship, isn't it? Subrat Chaudhary sir.
I would request him to repeat his question because there are a lot of disturbance. I couldn't hear his question properly.
Subrat Chaudhary sir, yes.
Yes, sir. My question was, as these MBA students, they used to go for undergoing this kind of a summer internship training. Now, due to this pandemic, I think all over India, not only in our state, they have not undergone this kind of a summer internship for them. So, what happens normally when they are going for this project, they are getting exposed to certain extent of practical things, but they didn't get that. So, how this design thinking can help us to get them give them the input, some kind of input, so that they can be a little bit practical oriented.
Right.
Yeah. So quickly answering your question, sir. First of all, we need to ask ourselves why a student has to undergo internship during the course of his, engineering or arts or whatever. What does the student gain out of doing internship? Why is the AICTE or the UGC norms or the college norms insisting that a student has to undergo internship? So all those questions, the assumptions behind these questions have to be asked. And then subsequently, we can find out as to what will enable him to, have a proper internship sitting at home from a particular, a company or anything else for that matter. Because I know a couple of colleges wherein the students, particularly the MBA students, have gone internship, sitting at home by being mentored by, the industry people from their office or from their homes. It is quite possible. Probably it's going to take a lot of time. Probably the expectation is about 20-30% lesser as compared to that, but we'll have to start somewhere.
Right. Even in VIT Business School and VIT University, we offered those type of internship. It was more activity based, which is possible, like app development and testing that app for engineering students and all those. They are there. Doctors, I think Professor Sabyasachi Dasgupta, your hand is also raised, and people whose questions has been answered, please lower your hand. We will take another 2-3 minutes to wrap up. Sabyasachi, your question.
I have a very small clarification. You talked about your son going from class 10 to class 11, and then you said that before the result, he went to class 11. So what was the point you were trying to make in terms of design thinking? This is what I did not get.
Oh. See, basically the questioning the assumptions, we always have certain assumptions saying that, this is how the marks have to come, the certificate has to come, and then the admission process has to happen, and all those things. Now, somebody questioned the assumption, do I need a mark sheet? Do I need somebody to tell me that this particular student has passed? Okay, so these are the assumptions that probably my son's school question themselves, and they said, let us start. Okay, no, we are going to run against a time constraint, right? But why not start it now, slowly and steadily? Now, what is the percentage of people who are not going to be fit for this particular thing? Because a student, opting for humanities, right? My son opted for humanities. Now, he scored about 93%, but still he said, I want to opt for humanities, right? The percentage of people who will not be eligible will be those people who have actually, failed. Now, that could be maybe 1% or 2%, which risk the school was willing to take. Right. So the questioning assumptions is very, very important. I was coming from that aspect.
Okay.
Right. Ramki sir, you told that somebody was telling covering the syllabus. You told why uncovering the syllabus. I think we have to question stereotypes. That 93% means humanities. It is not proper. It should be engineering. It should be medicine. That is a stereotype in our mind, and we should have to break stereotypes to venture into something like a blue ocean strategy of making the life better. Okay, so now I will tell you one thing. In school education, we don't have good physics and chemistry and maths teachers. You know why? Because our generation, best of the students went to engineering, medicine, law, and there was a huge dearth of bright minds going into fundamental sciences, basic sciences. But we were taught by teachers who actually topped their batch and went into physics, chemistry, maths, all these original work and research work, right? So questioning assumptions and breaking stereotypes is very important. Another important thing, A plus B, when we do a whole squaring, we get A square plus B square plus 2AB. But when we do A square plus B square, it is not that 2AB, it's only A square plus B square. Integrating primary, secondary and higher education in India is most essential. We are customers to each other. The problem with Indian education system is rote learning. Is the academic evaluation system proper? That you have to rote learn throughout the year and attempt some question which will only test your theoretical knowledge. Where is the practice? Can we really practice it? So I think it requires a lot of overhauling, learning, relearning, unlearning, again relearning. So anyway, I think Professor Shehbaz is here. He is from Hyderabad. We had a lovely interaction yesterday. Professor Shehbaz, do you want to interact with Ramki sir?
Okay, can we have this as the last question, sir? Because I have to jump into another meeting.
Right,
apologies, I'm not able to give time, but definitely any mails or subsequently we have.
Sir, it's a lovely interaction. Shehbaz sir, please, your question, the last one. Professor Shehbaz, can you hear me? Please unmute yourself if you have a question. Professor Shehbaz, you have to unmute yourself. Sir, you have to unmute. We can't hear you. Professor Shehbaz, we can't hear you. You have to unmute yourself.
I think Dr. Sudipto, why don't you unmute him?
Good afternoon.
Yes.
Actually, I was just going through a lovely presentation. Indeed, it was enriching. But one small concern I had, because when mentioning about the design thinking, to what extent you also mentioned about the aesthetics part. So to what extent we can leverage between the cost and the aesthetic part? Because when you're talking about aesthetics, I think we cannot compromise on cost. And at one point of time, there will be the ethical concern regarding the cost effectiveness. And the another side, we will be compromising on aesthetics.
So this is where design the thinking and then subsequently thinking the design comes. So what is more important here? Is it the cost which is important or the aesthetics which is important? It actually depends upon that specific product or that particular specific service that we are looking into. So
can I interrupt? Because you mentioned about the differentiator point of view, because myself and Professor Sudipto, we are from the marketing background. So our concern is only focus and differentiation. So when you talk about strategy and then, there is a very thin bottom line dividing between the both.
No, I totally agree with you. And this is where the unstated requirements, which we have been harping around, so much time here, we have been coming about. Aesthetics is, more about what the customer actually wants than what I can deliver, right? So this is where the differentiation aspect of aesthetics comes in. Aesthetics is important, but where do we place in terms of the sequence of requirements which the customer wants is where the questions lie. So I would put it that way.
Okay. Right, great. Actually, Ramki sir has to jump into another online meeting. So we can hear a clap for him like we did it for Anbu sir in the pre-noon session. Fantastic. I think
Thank you so much. Thank you.
it's lovely session, Ramkrishnan sir, and we want to have you furthermore. We will be disturbing you. See, the clap are very floating from India, across India.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Fantastic, and salute to all your patients to take all the questions. I hope you also enjoyed the interaction.
Definitely. I did enjoy. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Anbu sir here. The intellect design arena rocks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. You resource persons can leave now, and I will get connected with them for assignments they have to give to the participants. Already Anbu sir have it in the WhatsApp. Okay, participants now, please tell me our flaws. We have tried to rectify few things, and if you are concerned about few more, you please put it across. I am trying to give everybody some chance to interact with our guests, but might be I am missing out due to the time pressure. Okay, so anything from people who haven't asked question but still you have something, you can always post it in chat box, and we will be putting the recording in YouTube. As I told you, we can have discussion further. We require feedbacks in AICT Atal portal from you. So you please give your feedbacks there. I have asked the two people who have presented today with their phenomenal style to give us assignments which will be more action oriented. So you can think and give a solution of really a course which is for might be hearing and disabled people or differently challenged people. Okay, think of something beyond the obvious, right? So I see some hands going up. Dr. Raja, I am apologetic to you. I apologize. I saw your hand up, then your hand got lowered. I understood that virtual hand got lowered by a click of a button. But sir, I missed you, sir. Sorry, you are elder to me, and I didn't give you a chance to ask the question. Sorry. Next time this mistake won't happen.
Okay. Okay, sir. Thank you. You have been making the session quite interesting. But I also have a few correction. I do not know because you do not know my date of birth. Before that, you commented, you are elderly.
Sir, we are always thinking like that in India. Young people get blessings. So that's why.
Okay, sir. Sir, actually, my thought was, see this program that I saw the content, everything is okay, good. In fact, now I was very highly interested, to learn something through this particular thing. And the way you have been conducting it also is quite interesting. But one small suggestion is, see, the theme is, design thinking and innovation. I think the FTP also should be somewhere, where there should be some kind of an innovation, that happens, within the way how an FDP should be conducted, or there should be some outcomes, like through, for example, we are having mostly a kind of an interactive, lecturing kind of a model, but of course it is interactive, right? But anything which is practical, for example, being a faculty development program, at the end of the fourth day, if I am able to imbibe the decision, that design making, thinking principles in one of the course, and then I am able to present that, I think that would be something a great, an outcome, of this particular program. So can you also see to it, something like that happens, so that where we are also able to benefit, and then we finally call it, it's a faculty development program because there is an outcome.
Dr. Raja, your question is like a flashback. I tell you, you are already into the fourth day, and we have already decided for some activities for all of us. So it will be there. Okay, so let us wait for the fourth day. And in the meantime, in the assignment of this Microsoft Teams section, you will find lot of queries coming from my end, because I thought that for faculty members, one of the best activity can be designing a course, designing a new program, or thinking about a new target audience and delivering it. How you will deliver for a new audience. So at one point of time, we thought executive MBA for executives in the corporates. So can we think a really material management course for housewives, or do they really require a material management course for housewives, or you require some other type of management? I am telling you, the rural management, okay, for the urban urchins who goes to rural places or in mountains, they will throw mineral water bottles and create nuisance with the environment. I am introspecting myself. Dr. Raja, you are getting me, I hope. So I am thinking of some assignment along with the resource person, whatever they are delivering. We are definitely going to put you in some challenge. Okay. So just wait for the climax to happen. Okay. So any other queries? Dr. Raja, thank you for such a lovely way of putting us on track.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Any suggestion? I think one thing has seamlessly smoothed out is the connectivity issues and joining issues. So I was very anxious. People were fighting between Sundar Pichai and Bill Gates. Okay, whether it will be Google Meet or Microsoft Office. So finally the American owned, okay, because VIT has adopted Bill Gates' product. But browser is Google Chrome only.
Sir,
Okay.
now the competition between Satya Nadella and Sundar Pichai, sir.
No, sir, it is between Satyam, Sundaram, Satyam, Shivam and Sundaram. All three are from India. Okay. So Satya Nadella is there, Shiv Nadar is there, and also Sundar Pichai is there. India is ruling supreme, sir, except these Wuhan people created mess. Okay. Right. Pupala, sir.
Sir, I have a request, sir. I had to, because of a class, I couldn't, log into the second session.
Right.
So would it be possible for you to upload this in the Facebook today itself, sir, so that I could go home and then listen to it and then do your assignments?
Sir, very little hair is left on my head. That's why I wear this cap. Now the question is, you are asking me to upload today itself in Facebook. Saptorshi, I have the recording. Okay. So please help me so that I can satisfy Professor Pupala, so that Facebook uploads can be done today itself. I am very bad in social media management, but I am a social person. Okay. So,
Sudipto, sir, may I interrupt?
Yes, tell me, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank
I
you,
think, sir, you can use a MS Stream. Over there, you already have the link of the recording, which can be shared with the participant. I think.
Okay. Yes.
Your IT team can figure it out. With MS Stream, they can share it among the participants.
Right.
It must be uploaded.
All the recordings has gone to MS Stream. So just you have to click on get the link and then send it.
Usually what happens in my class is I will get the video in my mail.
Yeah.
But this time I am not getting. Morning session I didn't get. So I usually download and I then circulate.
We have to also check that it is not full, because many a times MS Stream gets full and video recording it's difficult to get back.
It's hampered.
So every day it's good at least if you can download it and keep it in your hard disk.
Right, I will do that. I will take the help of the technical people. Today we will have a discussion in the evening. So we work till 12 o'clock in the night with the technical team, because VIT has told YouTube enough leaves. So now there are no Saturdays, Sundays, no nights and morning. So you understand, in private company, it's really tough. And we learn more also from this environment. So hope we can call it a day.
Hi, Sudhir sir.
Yes, sir. Tell me.
Yeah, you can at least share the link, the YouTube channel, because if you share the link on the WhatsApp group, it will be easier to access. I think so.
That's a good suggestion.
Once the link is created in either Facebook or YouTube, that can be shared in the WhatsApp group, so everyone
Hey,
can access.
Shabdoshi bhai,
Ah.
see, you are also a part of our team. So I think I will give you a resource ID so that you can manage it out and help me. I will talk with the technical team today how to get the links and all, because I am not getting the video in my mail. Let me check also after I end this session what best I can do.
In the session, just see that whether it is showing to download, because many a times if it is not
There,
uploaded
I'm
in the,
checking. It's not there. I don't know.
Sir, actually, can you upload at the end of the session? Actually, what happens, you know, the every session is I cannot attend in time because sometimes for today I can tell you actually I have a class from 3 to 3:45, and during that period I don't attend the class, so I missed the what he said. So that's why I want if
I
you
understand. I
upload
understand
in
the
the
concern.
evening, so I can.
sir, please put off the recording. I think.
Can play this so that I can hear what happened previously.
Okay.
Yeah,
Understood. I will stop the recording now. Right? Yes.
Yes, sir.